CLNS Media Patriots Roundtable. I'm your host, Nick QUAGLIA, sitting here with Mike MOLYNEAUX and with MARV EZHAN. And we made it after a summer of scraping and clawing, trying to figure out what the hell we were going to talk about. We've made it to week one of the football season. The Patriots got the Dolphins this week. We're really not going to talk about that game too much. We're going to more so talk about, because we saved this is our third season now with the show, which, is impressive. It's time's flown by with this show. But we're going to talk about, like we usually do week one, prior to week one, what we think this team's going to do this season. And it's a totally different ball game, obviously, this year. And I did just mention how we were scraping, we were clawing for different topics. But once again, I just want to say thank you, God, to Cam Newton, because that changed everything for us. That gave us things to talk about. We didn't have to talk about, is Jarrett Stidham going to be good? The second Cam Newton signed with the Patriots, we knew Cam Newton was going to be the guy. So, anyway, on to the Patriots season. Guys, pretty simple question this week. Let's just talk about how we think this team's going to do. What we think their record's going to be if they make the postseason, how deep they're going to go into the postseason, and what they're going to look like in the ranks of the AFC and obviously the AFC East too. So really just a season prediction. How is this team going to do? Marv, let's start with you. What do you think?
First of all, congrats, fellas. We did make it to season 3. I didn't even know this is our third season together doing the show.
Three?
So that's dope. That's dope. Shout out to season 3 with my guys. This Patriots year is gonna be interesting. It's going to say the least. Getting Cam Newton, I think, adds a different dynamic to things, and we're gonna see, Josh McDaniels, who's been clever at times, and we saw him be very clever, needing to be very clever with offensive plays last year because you just had no weapons to do. Now you got a guy who can do a couple things. You can add the RPO into the offense. But once again, you're going to a season where Mike and I were talking about this yesterday on Double M, where you don't have an offense. You still don't have an offense. And if you think you do, there's a lot of question marks. And I think that's really going to hamper this offense and the Patriots season in total. The defense still looks good. I think when we think about this 2020 season, it's going to be the season we say Belichick hit in the draft. I like these young linebackers and safeties that they drafted. I think Uche is going to be a hit. Jennings, Duggar. I think these guys are going to come right away, especially with 8 guys leaving due to COVID. I think these guys are going to come right away and make a huge impact on the team. With that being said, I'm seeing a 10-6 type of season. I think Patriots are going to start off very slow. The schedule is very, very hard. You got, I think, the Seahawks early. You have the Chiefs. You got the Ravens all up in the early schedule. And I wouldn't be shocked if this season starts off at a 4-5. But then at the second half, after the bye, things start to really open up for the Patriots. And I think that's when they're going to start to go on a late run, a late playoff push, and get that 10-6 record. Now, if they make it or not, that just depends on how good the rest of the AFC is. If we believe that the AFC has got a lot better, we already know the upper echelon with Kansas City and Baltimore Ravens. But after that, there's a lot of question marks there. And if the Patriots can sneak in at 10-6 as a wild card team, I think they can surprise some teams there. But overall, it's going to be bumpy. It's going to be bumpy for Cam Newton. Is still a guy who doesn't, I don't think, know fully the full playbook, and he's going to be learning on the go. And that's how I see this season going. 10-6 with the Patriots, scratching for the wild card, but having some future pieces to build on defensively for the future.
You're right. I think Bill did hit, and I think that's going to show this year. I think Bill did hit on the draft well, especially this past draft. And I mean, you brought up the defense specifically. I mean, like, even last year, you grabbed Winovich, who a lot of people see Winovich having a big role this year. So he might have even hit something big last season. And you mentioned the schedule too, which everybody's been mentioning the schedule, and it's valid because within the first 4 weeks, you have the Seahawks and you have the Kansas City Chiefs. Within the first 6 weeks, you then include the 49ers, who, as a lot of people probably remember, were in the Super Bowl last season. So that's a tough one. You got Houston on the schedule. You got Arizona on the schedule, which they weren't great last year, but their offense has the potential to explode this year. You've got the Rams. It's a tough schedule this year, which is going to it's one of the toughest in the league, I believe. Statistically, it's one of the toughest in the league. But that's going to be interesting to see what games they can pull out and what games that they cannot pull out, especially against their really tough opponents. Because I think they're going to get a surprising win this year in there somewhere. Mike, what do you think?
This is the year that we're really going to find out how awesome and amazing of a coach Bill Belichick is. You know, all these years, the talk has been they have Brady and Belichick, the best quarterback coach combination of all time. Individually, people have Brady as the greatest of all time and Belichick as the greatest of all time. But this is a year, you know, Marv just said it, you know, the offense outside of Cam Newton, offense really isn't that much. Cam Newton just adds that little spark, the name, you know, the possibilities and optimism that we have when we think of Cam Newton.
Adds a lot more hype.
It's a lot of hype. It's a lot of hype. And I mean, Cam Newton deserves the hype because he showed what he's capable of throughout his career when healthy. But outside of Cam Newton, offensively, this team doesn't have really much to show for it. And, you know, obviously defensively, I think that's where the Patriots have a lot of their success. But are you quick to say this is maybe a top 5 defense in the league? I don't know if I jump to say that right off the bat. I think for sure this is going to have to be a season where a lot of the wins that the Patriots get, Belichick's going to have to outcoach the opponent. That's what it's going to boil down to. You know, we're going to really find out. And not that we haven't seen it before, but we're going to really find out how great of a coach Belichick is because this team, say Belichick decided to retire this year. Brady left. He says, the era's over. I'm going to walk away as well. And this team was just handed to McDaniels. I don't care if it's Cam Newton, Jarrett Stidham. You wouldn't have much optimism for this team, period. But just because you know that Belichick is still leading the way, I think that's where a lot of the optimism and hope and belief that, oh, this team will still be okay, probably still be at the top of the AFC East, still make the playoffs. I think that's where a lot of it lies because Belichick is there. And I think despite the talent or lack thereof that this team has, he'll put them in the best position possible to be successful this year. That's what it really boils down to. And, you know, like I think we've talked about before, and my stance hasn't really changed. I see them in the 10-6, 9-7 area, getting in there through the wild card. You know, the days of just looking at the New England Patriots saying, oh, they're the best team, one of the best teams in the AFC, automatic lock to make the conference championship game. Those days are done. But this year, like Marv said, scratching and clawing, you know, 10-6, 9-7 around that area because Bill Belichick will take this team that doesn't have much, but a pretty solid former MVP quarterback and coach the hell out of them and squeeze all the juices out of them to make them successful and get them to the playoffs.
So I'll ask you this, and Marv, I don't think you answered this, so I'll ask you right after. Do they win the division? The Bills are obviously their biggest contender. Do they win the division?
I say yes.
Marv, what do you think?
I'm not sure. I have no idea if they win this division. I see the Bills being around the same record as the New England Patriots, around 10-6, 9-7, 11-5. I think there's going to be a battle for the top spot of the AFC East between those two teams, and the Bills have a great chance to lead the division. The fact that it's going to be a battle and you still have some veterans there who have pride with the New England Patriots, I'll give the edge to the Patriots wanting to still hold on to that AFC title. AFC
right, and
East.
I think they win the division too. I think it's going to be very close. Obviously, the Bills, again, are their biggest opponent, their biggest threat to taking away the division crown. But you guys both talked about Bill Belichick a bunch and the question marks. Those are two giant things I want to hit on. Bill Belichick, even if it was Jarrett Stidham as the quarterback this year, Bill Belichick is the reason why you should have any remote optimism with this team. I mean, we saw what he did with Matt Castle the one year that Tom Brady went down. They still, I believe, they were an 11-5 team. Matt Castle, not that great of a quarterback. Good, serviceable, but not that great. So I think having Bill Belichick as the coach is the main reason why you should be optimistic with this team. And yeah, you've got Cam Newton. You've got former MVP Cam Newton. Not that far off from it, only a few years ago, 2015. So what, 5 years ago? And he's still young. This guy, if he can come back healthy, we know the talent's there, and you mix that in with the coaching of Bill Belichick, with the offensive mind of Josh McDaniels, I think this offense can do something. But that goes in with the question marks that, Marv, you mentioned. The question marks on this team are crazy offensively. You've got your first-round wide receiver, N'Keal Harry. Who knows what he's going to do this year? There seems to be a lot of hope this year with him. He seems to have gotten bigger. I believe he thinks to have gotten, I believe he might have gotten faster too. N'Keal Harry, I do think is going to take a big step forward this year, and I'm excited to see that, but he is a question mark. The running backs, who knows? Lamar Miller's gone now. Sony Michel, we all agree, that guy stinks as far as this show goes. Damian Harris, he's now hurt through at least 3 weeks. I mean, what are we doing at running back? Who is Cam Newton going to throw to? He's going to have to run the ball every single play. But then you got other guys too. I mean, Bird apparently is had a really good training camp. Julian Edelman is going to be Julian Edelman. You got those 2 rookie tight ends that people are all sorts of jacked up for. Ossie. I have heard that people, if you didn't know who Ossie was, you would think this guy's already a top-level tight end. People are obsessed with this kid, and I haven't seen him play a snap yet. So, a ton of question marks. This team, I think, has the potential to go 11-5. But I think in reality, I'm with you guys, 10-6, but I'm going to make my prediction at 11-5 because I'm going to see that Bill Belichick magic sprinkle on this team. In the schedule too, I mean, so I mentioned earlier, these surprise wins. I think there's going to be a surprise win in there somewhere that's going to get us way too overexcited with this team. They're going to beat somebody like maybe they end up beating the Ravens because Bill saw what Lamar Jackson did last year, figures them out, and beats them this year. Maybe that. Are they even playing the Ravens? Did I just make that up?
They play the Ravens.
They are playing the Ravens. Okay, just making sure. Maybe they beat the Ravens because, again, they've got that blueprint from last year with Lamar Jackson. Maybe they do that. We're going to get way too excited about it, and then they're going to tear us down. Maybe. So I'm going to go with 11-5, but the reality, it could be a 10-6 season. I think it's going to be right there, 10 wins or 11 wins. And I think that's a pretty good consensus with a lot of people.
Listen, Nick, if that defense and special teams can play like they played last year in the first 8 games, there's going to be some games stolen there. It doesn't matter what your offense is. With all those turnovers, the block kicks, the special team returns, you can steal a couple games with that you're predicting.
Losing Chung so I think losing Hightower, I think Chung is a more important loss than Hightower. I like Dante Hightower a lot, don't get me wrong. I think he's getting a little older. I think he's getting slow. I think the giant thing that you lose from his loss is his leadership. And Marv, again, your rookie defensive players that you were talking about earlier, I think they're going to have a pretty significant impact if they play the way that we think they can play this year.